Dane Cook, thank you for joining me on the Mindful podcast.
It's great to be here. I've been a fan for what you have been putting out there, so it's nice to sit and chat.
Thank you. This episode is about resilience and bouncing back. When I look at your story, it's an incredible one. You have done things that most comedians, never mind people, have done. Do you feel like a resilient person? And how do you see resilience? How would you define it, given it through your own lens?
Yeah, it's interesting because the resilience and the word resiliency is, it's probably the word that I go to most when I'm, mentoring or helping somebody cope. Through a situation. I always kind of hold on to that. And I always it's funny, actually, one of my best friends in the world today was at my home. And I remember about 5 years ago, I took him down to Santa Monica. We went on the bike path and he was dealing with some
I was doing that last night.
Yeah, beautiful bike ride. And he got some bad news on our bike ride 5 years ago. Wow. And it was at a moment in his life when he felt like the pendulum was swinging in a direction that was, for him. He felt like, this is my moment. And we were celebrating that moment on a bike ride. He pulled over, he gets a phone call. And without going into all the, flotsam and jetsam, something he was really working for many years toward, like almost instantaneously, it was a demise of sorts. And man, I watched him go from this, sunset bike ride with his buddy where we're talking about what's next and new chapters and we're at the start. We're actually like coming out of the gate and he's like, it's over. I didn't even get to enjoy this for a day. And I said to him right there, I said, you're going to be resilient, Daniel. I said, Daniel, that's the word, resilient. And we talked there. We were on the side of the bike path for, a number of hours. And then, of course, for months to come. And every time I see him, including today, the first thing he says when he walks in the door, he goes, resilience. Because Daniel went from the lowest moment of his life to I watched him not only through a circumstance which seemed like a dead end. In his mind, he was at the end of something. What he didn't know is he was about to fall in love with the woman of his dreams. And now he has 3 beautiful children and a life and a lifestyle that I think was far more mission critical to sustaining a long, happy life versus what he looked at as like a victory that'll give him a little bit of buzz, a little bit of, we talk about it now and say, you got to always remember resiliency and believing that the collapse, I say this a lot now, nothing's ever falling apart. It's only ever falling together. I have to look at everything like that because I've had my own plenty of moments in this career and life where I could have easily said, okay, I'm under the rubble. I'm comfortable now. Let me just stay under here. And there's a little bit of pain, but at least nothing else can fall down on me. But little do you know that it's actually setting you up for a win.
Yeah.
It's real easy. Sorry, I'm rambling already out of the gate, but you just like the word and the situation, just seeing Daniel today and kind of like the serendipity of this conversation. It's I think this whole gig of life is how many challenges can you take before you tap out and don't realize the next great thing is beyond that collapse. And it's changing your perspective. It's ruminating on positive things. It's like focusing on your strengths. It's, not putting out that energy and being a magnet for negativity, not calling to you the things that you believe will cause you to fail. And it takes a lot of time, effort, and energy to become a person that accept greatness in your life. Accept greatness. Be open to it. Be open to accept that. Don't go, here another day, or it's probably gonna fucking like last time. If you do that, then what are you putting out there? What is what are the molecules? What are the cells? What are the the tiny vibrating particles? What are they? What are you telling them to look for? What are you attracting?
Yeah, it's funny. We find when things are going great, we find it hard to stay in the present moment. We're constantly, when we have things around us that are really great, our mind can be elsewhere. Yeah. When things are in the crap, we're stuck in the present,
Yeah.
where it's shit,
Right.
and it's hard for us to see a future beyond that.
And a little bit of good in a lot of crap feels great.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
so, but I used to jokingly say on stage at some point during my, 3+ decades, I'm an optimistic pessimist. I'm an optimistic pessimist. I'm pretty sure everything's going to go wrong.
Yeah.
I kind of stick with that. It's like, okay, I'm enjoying this, but hey, there's something gnarly is coming, and I'm going to be okay. Just enjoying this for as long as this is a part of the run. But I'm a true believer when you try to, the universe doesn't want you to hold on to anything, and it doesn't want you to get too, you can sit and go, we're safe here, we're comfortable, but something inevitably will come through the door and go, you have to move. Even if we're guaranteed we can be here, fine, comfortable, have everything we need, like that, something's gonna make you, nope, we're not meant to be passive creatures. I don't believe that it's part of our run. I think something's always gonna, what's that story about the buildings going up and there's that one small house that the guy doesn't want to move, and the buildings go all around, and suddenly he's this tiniest house with like skyscrapers around him, and he was so hell-bent on protecting that he forgets that all the people, places, and things around him are just new, beautiful, wonderful experiences that are now right outside his door that he should enjoy. It's not a bad thing to...
Yeah. Was that Up? Was it that movie? Up?
It wasn't Up, but it was, for me, I think it was, there's different incarnations, but it was like a children's book, and I don't remember now I want to find out, but it was like this idea that like you can't live a life of comfort is being a part of this adventure, the lottery ticket. We're all in this life. We got picked. We're in it. Whatever you want to believe, if we're from the Guff or some big bang, whatever it is you want to believe, we're in it. We got picked. And so I believe that it's incumbent upon all of us to go, I think there's two things that I need to do here. I think I need to take on the challenge that it's not going to be an easy seasons. And what am I giving to the community around me? Quite literally, and then beyond that, what am I participating in, and what can I put in to make the whole run? When people look at me, go, oh, he was part of the things that made me feel spirited, good, accentuated. So I choose to live my life like that.
Yeah. You've been making people feel good for a long time. Can we go
it.
back to the 90s and what was the first...
Let's not. We can talk about it, but oh man, that was a tough era.
Boot-cut jeans and...
Yeah.
What was the time that maybe sticks with you in terms of, oh, something's happening here. There's momentum. I'm feeling a bit of turbulence here.
When you take on a career in the arts, it's taken me a lot of years to kind of come up with good metaphors and things that I feel like it feels most like. But I always say, on one hand, it's like living at the blackjack table, and if you play blackjack, it's fun for a little bit, and then it's at some point the shoe's going to change and that the luck is not going to be in your favor, and that, yet you keep playing. And so I kind of feel like the early part of my career is sitting there and waiting for that hand, waiting for one thing to put a few more chips in front of you so you can go, okay, I can do this for a living. I can stick with it. I think where I started to feel a shift was I was dealing with two things simultaneously in the early 90s, which was I had an incredible amount of anxiety. I was a very anxious person. It didn't manifest on stage to where you could look and go, oh yeah, you look terrified. I know, I actually look probably more comfortable, and there was something about comedy that was like, it's okay if you fail here because everybody else is failing here too. There's a few very funny people. You may get there, but now you're not alone in feeling off kilter. It was a world of off-kilter clowns.
Yeah.
Why
are so many of us comedians who are naturally or were anxious people drawn to the one thing that scares the shit out of people who aren't anxious?
Well, maybe in your experience, like I found for me when I went on stage, the doubting Thomas voice, the other versions of like unhealthy ruminating, and that you can't have those because all that stuff, the noise stops. And it's really you in front of a group of people that I never forgot are rooting for me. They didn't come there. We're not gladiators. They didn't come here to see somebody get eaten. They came here because they want you to win. And so,
I do remember walking out on stage in a club in Newcastle in England where I was being booed before my foot ever touched the stage. I was like, oh, great. Okay, here we go.
And there've always been gigs and places along the way that you're like, wow, this feels like a rip in the fabric of time. This doesn't feel very welcoming. This doesn't feel very. But for the most part, I think that most audiences are coming out. Today's day and age, obviously it's different too, because I think more audiences feel participatory, and I think there's a lot more kind of like Knives Out. But back then, stand-up comedy was coming out of what we called the boom, which was the big 80s era where comedians were becoming ginormous stars. The Robin Williams of the world and Roseanne Barr and Jerry Seinfeld, and coming off the era of Carlin, who is now doing these HBO specials every couple of years that were really just prolific and irreverent and just a whole bunch of good stuff. And so the 90s era was like coming out of this incredible boom, and crowds were still just sitting in the seat like, what's going to happen here tonight? It is a very different era now because people have seen enough comedy and it's been part of the lexicon for so long. But back in that moment, 1991, when I looked at a crowd of people, they really looked like, he's up there. And so the places that I was performing at, to answer your question in the roundabout, is I would get up on stage. I didn't feel anxious. I felt I would get laughs. I even was getting a couple laughs at the very beginning. I didn't really have material or a lot of. I was a whirling dervish. I was kind of just up there trying to grab at anything. And if I thought something was working, I knew how to like milk it and lean into it and be like, all right, they like this tonight. They don't like the physicality. They like more introspection. And I would kind of always go with it. But I was learning in real time that I had purpose. And the moment I felt like I had a purpose, I didn't feel lost. I felt lost till 22. Till 22, I was like, don't know why I'm on this planet. I don't like myself very much. I had self-loathing. I had anxiety. I had sometimes panic attacks that were really gnarly. It just had very low self-esteem, was truly an introvert by the definition of the word. But when I went on stage, I was a person that I always dreamed about being. A showman and about somebody who could make people feel good.
Yeah.
And I wanted to feel good. And that's it. So that connected with me.
All anyone has to do is, if you look back at your shows, the Vicious Circle show that the televised. I think you getting to the stage takes about 20 minutes because like you're just talking about delight of the crowd. Obviously it's your hometown,
right?
And you're walking through the crowd and it's just high fives. People are going completely mental. And when I look at it, it gives me shivers because I'm like, that's someone who's so right in the pocket of his flow, and you were doing something that was different as well. Your style of comedy was very, is and was very different, and it's something that I can relate to as someone who has done a lot of improv, and the fact that you bring so much physicality into it, and you can see you're clearly riffing at times, but obviously you still have the material, but you're not afraid to go these places, and sometimes just your face is the joke.
Right.
I mean that in the nicest way.
Right.
That you're delivering so much with your body as well.
Well, there's vibrancy because I'm experiencing moments with a massive crowd, and I'm discovering things. So some of the joy you're reading and some of the characters they were happening in real time with a framework that was 10 years of being out there and putting it all together.
But you were doing it in the round as well, which is would terrify even the most confident of comedians. But, it's interesting, against the lens of you saying panic attacks, anxiety, low self-esteem, self-loathing. And here, 10 or 15 years later, you're standing on the most exposed stage you can stand on in the round, getting high fives from people, all around you, and the air of confidence that you have on stage, is, you would never imagine that you could feel anything except super confident. Right. How much of that was Dane the performer, or what were you like when you were coming off stage, when you were just regular Dane?
A lot of the, that was like a moment where I really ascended. That was the upper echelon. That was it. That was the real pinnacle of everything that I had, from the hell gigs to the, the great early, work that I had the good fortune of sharing stages with heroes and comics that I grew up loving. That was it. I knew it. I knew this. In fact, I just recently was talking about, this is year 34. I said, if I had to pick not too many people can go, what's the exact place and moment in your life where is like the center of your life, the middle of wherever you're at, and that's it. That the middle of that room on that night is it doesn't matter the timeline, how old I am. That's the middle of my life. That's where everything I was to that moment, and then who I would be and who I chose to, indulge in, so to speak, as I was, 29 years old, 30 years old. Everything was that was like the center spot. And so when I hit the stage that night, I had the last 2 or 3 years before that felt like I'd really earned it. I felt like I was ready for my moment, and I also was taking the stage.
The middle of your life, that was the night.
Yeah, but I was saying that the couple of years leading up to it, I had finally really found acceptance within myself. My flaws, the things that I didn't think were good enough. I had enough of career under my belt before the big show to go, oh no, I have my worth. I'm also sometimes off kilter, and I know the things that are probably not my best assets. So I was becoming familiar with, myself as kind of a fully, formed human being. So by the time I take the stage that night, a couple of things actually had happened previous to that, which was one, I was genuinely proud of myself, happy that I had, set this dream in motion at 12 or 13 years old, and suddenly I was in the very place that I used to lay in bed and dream about being in front of, 20 or 30,000 people and just hearing laughter. But the other thing that night that really propelled me is, my mom had been sick with cancer for about a year and a half, a little over a year, leading up to that show. And she was my mom was a lot of things to me. She was my compass. She was my champion, truly a champion of mine, and wanted more than anybody to see me get past the fear and find my ability and revel in a life of quite literally dance. She loved to dance. So she'd be like, you gotta dance, honey, dance. Just get out there and move. And so the fact that she could not be there that night because she was too ill. She had gotten really sick. And it was the biggest show of my life. She never missed any shows that I'd done in New England, let alone Boston. And she couldn't travel back from Florida, where she was, succumbing to cancer. And so that night, and what that night meant to me, and why it is so much, the center of my life, was I don't think I've ever said it like this, and it just occurred to me. I put everything I had into that very moment, because even if the next day everything completely changed, I knew that was that night was closure, and I should be able to live the rest of my life based on my how proud I was to make my mom proud that night and myself, that anything else after that, I should never not look at that night and go, man, I got to do that. Some people don't get to approach their dream in that way, and I really got to beginning, middle, and end the dream, and be brave enough to do it. And I wouldn't have been able to do that without Donna, without my mom. So for a lot of reasons, that night was, a prolific night in my life.
Yeah. Well, look, let's move into where some of this resilience came from and the things that you had to deal with. So after that, obviously, you lost your mom, who you were incredibly close to. How did you cope with that loss at the time?
I did not. I just kept going. You know, I didn't imbibe. I don't drink. I don't do any drugs. I didn't. My how can I describe it? The damage I did to myself was thinking I could just success my way right out of grief, you know, that I just keep winning, doing all these big shows and racking up the numbers and racking up the money and racking up at that time I was in nobody said no to me at that point in the business. If I say I want to do a commercial and I'm like, okay. Like, so I was, cockshored, ego is, running high. I'm the belle of the ball. I'm the flavor of the decade. Really at that point, you had a longer run than you even do today. I was really, in a good run, but I wasn't going to let my mom's illness, death, and then my dad was sick right after that with cancer. It was like I couldn't look at it. I couldn't accept that that this is a massive amount of pain and that I should stop and just tell people I'm really sad. I'm really in a lot of pain. I'm really broken. I was like, I'm not going to say those things now. I'm on top of that. I'm living the dream. It's not fair that in the middle of this dream, tragedy is taking place. So those probably a few years. I'll tell you, this probably can encapsulate it more than most things of how unhealthy I was. I was on this is about 4 months after my mom passes away. And like I said, now I found out my dad is sick with cancer.
And what year is this?
This is like 06 and 07. It was, my mom was ill. Then a week after my mom died, my dad, like 7 days later, sat me down and said, I have cancer and I have this much time supposedly left to. I thought at that moment, I think my brain broke. I was like, this can't be real life. This is like, I felt like I was in a simulation that was like, the coding needed to be updated or something. I just was in completely capsized disbelief that and my dad was a big, tough motherfucker who looked like cancer would be scared of my dad if it was in his body. That's how, cancer, you'd think that cancer would be like, we got to get out of here. This is George Cook. We can't. So I was backstage one night, and what would happen is just how kind of like, ill I was, you could say. I would leave the stage, and it'd be an arena, 18, 20,000 people, and I would run to my dressing room. I would always leave this, good night, and I would run, but I would run not in like a trot. I would, whatever energy was left in me after the show, I would run, arena's pretty big. Sometimes your dressing room is about, half a mile away. And I would run in a way that like, even my assistant on the road or the people around me, like, you couldn't keep up with me. I was sweating more from the run than the show. And I would get into my dressing room and I'd open up my computer and I'd start working. I'd be working. I'd be writing a script. I'd be put social media, already posting things. And we had an assistant, and she was on maybe a stretch of 1 month of touring, and she was really excited to be working with me and on the tour. And it was the Friday night show. I did a Thursday night show, Friday night arena, and then I was going to have a Saturday, Sunday. And I run all the way back, open the computer. I could hear the people above the dressing room still like they're still getting up
Yeah.
to leave. And I'm toweling off and and she opened up the door and she goes, "That was so great. That was really great. Wow. That was, oh my gosh." And I remember I looked up at her and I said, "What was great?" And she goes, "The show. The show was like, that was amazing." And I remember hearing myself as I stared at her, I said, "The show's tomorrow night." And she closed the door and I sat in it for a second, but I didn't really think about it for years that I said, "The show's tomorrow night." I didn't have any feeling connection toward what I had just done. What show? The show's tomorrow. It's never the moment I'm in because I'm just running away from grief. I'm running from grief, and I gave it a good fucking race, man. I really think if grief were here, it'd be like, this motherfucker really, he almost got away from me. I did. I spent about 4 years not even thinking about it, and I thought I was good. I thought I was okay. I really believed that. I was like, no, if I work, I guess I'm fine. I cry a little once in a while, but yeah, get back to work. I didn't really know what it meant to accept that I was no longer going to see. Now I'm really emotional. I can even say it now, like that I'm never going to see my best friend again and my dad, who I was becoming very close with after a lot of tumultuous years.
It's funny because grief is one of those things that we see very obviously in other people, and we're full of advice,
Right.
like, you need to take some time out. You seem a bit frazzled. You should, can I cook you
Truly.
a shepherd's pie or whatever it is,
Right.
And when it comes to ourselves, there's like grief blinkers. 8 years after my dad died, I was driving to work and had to pull the car over and bawled my eyes out at the side of the road. And
Do you know what it was?
No,
on that particular drive that day?
no idea. It just was
was the
ready
day.
to come out. Yeah.
I understand that.
So that's a lot to be dealing with. And obviously you're throwing yourself into your work.
Yeah.
There is the big incident with your brother.
Right.
I'm fully aware that you are working on a documentary, so you're very limited in what you can talk about around that subject.
Yes.
But did that happened reasonably soon after you had lost your mom and dad?
It did. It was probably within 2 years of my parents passing away. And it was also in a moment of my career where I was cooling off. Things were starting to cool. I was no longer the shiny new toy. And if you know anything about the industry of show, they're on to the next one, right? They got to fill that void. So I knew I was at the end of a run, but I was also like just coming up for air before I had to deal with betrayal, betrayal that was like something, like a Aesop fable level, like something that was just so, I couldn't have written it. I couldn't believe what I had already experienced, and I couldn't believe the life I was living. I was also in rare air in a career that was tough to explain. I couldn't explain what that level of success and fame and wealth and all the stuff that came with it. I couldn't explain that. Most people didn't get it. The other people that share in that moment, well, they're off doing their own thing. They're keeping their own plate spinning. So when they say that like the top of the mountain is a lonely place, 100%. The loneliest place is once the journey's complete and you are at the upper echelon going, I got it. So I was dealing with both of these things simultaneously that I had no playbook on to like, how do I do this? How do I manage this?
But that's why when you're at the top of the mountain, the people who you have with you, that trust has to be so solid because
It does.
And I guess, that's what makes it all the more impactful.
But you hope that those people that are around you are, there's a lot of hoping. I hope that I hope not other people are. And what we learn from these moments that is so valuable is friendships and love. It's like anything else. It's work. You know, it can be gratifying work though, because once you learn that somebody is mindful, thoughtful, compassionate, collaborative, caring, once you can check boxes and you start to realize what a relationship, how it really does move and grow, it's the best. It's the greatest. But at the beginning, all you're doing is going, I really hope that the people around me seem good. They seem genuinely good and happy for me, but you still have to go through a certain parry thrust of what it means to like evolve with another human being and really understand why are you and what are you hoping for?
Yeah.
You know,
Well,
what are we getting?
how do you trust anybody after what happened with your brother?
Never lost trust.
Never
lost
did.
trust. No.
Were you
Still
suspicious of the people around you in
Well, I was in
your
Hollywood,
team?
so I was suspicious because I'd seen a lot of hinky,
Yeah.
you know, I'd seen bad deals and I'd seen a lot of, you know, I'd seen some piranhas and, you know, so I knew that I was already, you know, in a landscape where it's, you know, people looking out for themselves. You know, they want to take a chip off you and they want something from it.
But events like what happened with your brother, you know, you can go two ways after that. You could spend your whole life justifiably being angry and bitter and you know, regretful or sad or, you know, but when I see you speak and now that I'm sitting in front of you, you're not that person.
Right.
So when did that other road kick in for you? And did it take you a while to go, okay, shit, how am I going to...
Would it make sense to say that even though I was running from the grief I'd experienced, and not to make it more maudlin and sappier, I'd lost my mom, my dad, I lost my mentor, Frank Roberts, who is my high school drama instructor, who really was more my dad to me than my dad. All three of these people I'd lost over that short period of time. And then, of course, ultimately it was like my brother, you know, it was another death because this person that I grew up with that I knew was suddenly, but even though I was discombobulated during that time, I was still understanding that I had learned certain things from particularly my mom leading up, and the industry and some great people around me, but primarily like just the things that fortified me, things that my mom, you know, in our quiet moments would remind me of. Here's who you are, Dane. I know who you are. Not all the lights and I know really what that's all great, but I know who you are. What she told me and what she instilled when Daryl, my brother, did these things, she had prepared me for that. I just didn't realize that I had learned better than I even anticipated because I was the mechanics of it. You know, I understood coming out of it. I was definitely broken. I was definitely, you know, the pain was. It's almost impossible to even kind of describe that kind of pain when you love somebody like that and they betray you.
I'm curious, if you ever think about it, where do you feel that in your body?
I mean, I just feel it everywhere. I mean, I definitely, it's not just like my heart drops.
Yeah.
You know, there's a physical presence in your life that says they're protecting you. And when that isn't the case, I'm sure some people can look and go, well, that's everybody. But I understood, probably because of the great lessons my mom taught me, that even though it was my brother, that's not everybody. He did that. That's something he did. You know, I can get into it more. Unfortunately, I can't. Because I've learned a lot about him over the years. I've learned a lot about that situation. I know things that, you know, the documentary will be fascinating because you'll be able to, part two, this conversation will be the doc. But I will say, coming from that moment, I understood that I was becoming a more compassionate, empathetic, I was becoming a better friend, a better now husband. It was preparing me to be a more well-rounded human being, and also understand that joy is today. Joy is not what you put in the vault that you accomplished for all the years of schooling and, you know, the arenas. joy has nothing to do with what you gather.
That's a big shift. You went from the show is tomorrow to joy is today.
It's exactly right now. It's exactly right now. So hopefully to wrap up that little portion for you in a way that is some clarity on the guy you're talking to is I spent a lot of years running from a kid I didn't like. Then I succeeded. And then I was running towards something that I thought would heal me from grief and tragedy. And it took me till about 38 to finally realize I just need to sit still and appreciate that I have love to give myself, but I have love to give someone else. You know, it took me a long time to realize that's all. That's my value right there. And slinging some dick jokes once in a while and being fucking irreverent and getting on stage and like outputting energy and musicality and vernacular. And that's all good stuff. But I think those are all extensions. And I think what people really see, even though they see an entertaining fella, is somebody that really loves life. And I'm living this moment to hopefully make my circumstances around me better for everybody just because I'm happy in it. And I hope that I can receive that from you as well, because if you're feeling that, then by proxy, I get to be in your, whatever we want to call that, in the whatever you're emitting, and we're all vibrating, man. Everything's vibrating. So if we're both in this and we're good people and vibrating something positive, then it just feels like an enriched moment.
Nicely put.
Yeah.
Do you think you were criticized because you did things in a different way? I mean, you were essentially...
Comedically criticized?
Comedically, yeah.
Oh.
And if so, how did you handle that? Wait, did you still have that level of self-awareness in terms of that's their issue, not mine?
Yeah. When I first got criticized, it was like, at least I had thick skin, because in comedy on any given night, it's a lot of things happening all at once. And so you kind of, everything, the heckling and the hazing and the ball busting and the endless hours on the road where you're driving from one place where it doesn't matter and it doesn't feel like the next one matters. And so, you're kind of like street ready. But nobody is ready for the level of negativity when an entire, seemingly, it feels like the continent of the internet sometimes, like this is a place where, and there was a period where I almost couldn't accept that, wait, if I'm just trying to make people feel good and I'm just about finding some kind of something to be enthusiastic about versus what's happening truly in the world. Escapism, right? Come into my show for an hour and a half and hopefully you get something from it that, makes you feel good. I could almost understand death more than I could understand why somebody would be against my showmanship or whatever it was. That took a little while to finally realize too that has, what other people think of me is none of my business.
Which hurts more, do you think? The criticism from your peers or criticism from strangers?
The criticism from the peers at first hurt more, but as years go by and those peers start reaching out, and some of the people that said the worst things would seek me out and apologize or want to explain their reasoning for saying, sight unseen. Some of them had never met me, didn't know me, and then finally got to know me. Or maybe they saw an interview like this, I'm talking about my parents or something, that made them go, oh, yeah, now there's a connection. And that's, usually when healing begins. And I've been fortunate enough to actually break bread and sit with people that have been really said some fucking brutal things about me, towards me over the years, that I now consider very good friends and close friends. And maybe our relationships are even better because there's no filter, because we weren't filtered before, so why start now? And so incredibly, I'm not saying like, those stories of like, the general from this army, has lunch with the general from this army before they, kill each other every night. But you go like, oh, that did happen. There was an understanding there of like, hey, we both have a job to do, and there's a reason we're both at odds with each other. But as people, I understand you and you understand me.
Do you think they didn't understand the way you did it? In terms, you were essentially the first influencer. You used MySpace to build this huge audience.
Yeah, some people, the
grafters
old heads,
wouldn't have liked that.
The old heads didn't like it. I was pandering. I should be skulking in a dark club, drinking somewhere, and we don't see the audience. There used to be a time where I was like, no, the audience is a no, we don't cohabitate with the audience, with regular people, the paying customer. And I didn't buy any of that. To me, I looked at it then, and I certainly look at it today like everybody in that audience is a creator in their own network and wants their channel and their goods and wares and ideas to be identified. So they're coming to my show to hopefully put more spotlight even on their being a fan of mine is informing their customer of something. So I look at the audience as it's really we. It really is a bunch of people in a room.
But you replied to everyone's emails.
Back then, yeah. Back then, that was unusual. And I got a lot of shit for it. And I liked it.
But isn't it amazing? Like, you're there. You're just doing what we all have to do now. Even if you own a bloody flower shop, you're doing all those. You're replying to everybody's things, and
you're keeping your customers, in the know.
Yeah. So by the time people got to your show, I'm sure they felt like they knew you. They had a connection to you that they couldn't have with other people. You know?
And so there was a lot of backlash because of that. There was also some backlash because at a certain point too, you become such you're zeitgeisting to the point where either people are sick of seeing you, you're actually sick of seeing yourself. There's certain things that you're like, why did I should take a break. Or I didn't need to even do that thing at that time. So it's like too much of a good thing, too much ice cream, and then suddenly you're like, I have a bellyache. I don't want to even want that anymore. And so I understood it was like my shelf life at that time. I was in the public eye for a good 8-year run, where every day, morning DJs were talking about Dane Cook and the show. And there was a lot of people that I recognized were frustrated at my success. Some people say, oh, there was a lot of jealousy and you were a young guy and girls. And I'm sure there was some of that too. But I also think it was in the workplace, comics just wanted to see other people get that mantle. And they didn't want me to get another mantle. They didn't want me to have another go-round. So there was a little while there where I was probably taking some unnecessary kicks and hits. And then, to be fair, I was probably kicking and hitting back at people when I should have probably just had some more gratitude at that point. It was almost like, oh, now you're going to say I don't deserve this. So I'm putting effort and energy into like wanting to beat you back when, it's kind of interesting to look and go like, oh, I didn't even realize how moments where you think you know it all. And you're like, oh, I did, but I just knew all of the wrong thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's like guitar. I learned guitar by myself. And I thought I knew it all because I could play really good. I'm a pretty good rhythm guitarist. And then a pro guitarist watched me play one day and he's like, why do you put your fingers like that? And I went, that's how I learned. He goes, yeah, but then now you can't even get over to the C. You can't even physically do it. Like, so you have to unlearn that. And I was like, oh, but my way. And he was like, well, you can only play a limited amount of. So I learned that. I was like, I thought I was the best at my way. And I realized, no, sometimes you just have to, stop fighting, stop pushing back, listen, a lot of listening, and then realize I could be doing a lot better in having a healthier experience if I am willing to admit that all this stuff that I got, all these things that I accomplished, some of these things are to my detriment, and I need to start like taking some weight out, getting rid of some of the things and getting back to just being I'm just a fella. I'm a guy and I love what I do and I've had some wow moments and that's pretty much it, and I hope I have some more wow moments, but I have gratitude every day for the fact that I just get to get up and shoot the shit and talk about, possibility. Talking
Yeah.
about possibility is sometimes even more gratifying than making the possible possible.
Well, isn't that a key to resilience? Is being able
Yeah.
to see now through a lens of well, what's possible. You know, when I think back to, you know, after your brother and you had to face, you know, the reality that you were missing many millions of dollars that you used to have, your immediate thing was to go back out on the road,
Right.
self-finance this incredible tour, and you made the money back in like 18 months or something.
Yeah, just under.
Like, but again, there are times when most of us, faced with what you'd been through, would again quite justifiably be allowed lie down. But you got straight back up and went, right, fuck this. I'm going to go out. I'm going to organize my own tour. I'm going to make all that money back in 18 months. Not that that's easy, but where does this drive come from? And that voice that goes, stop feeling sorry for yourself.
Yeah.
Get up and let's do something about that.
Fear, humiliation, and competitiveness. Three things that I was, embroiled in, which was the fear of, I thought that by, ending up, say, penniless, and if my career didn't have another sweeping moment, which I was fortunate enough to have, but the fear of, what am I if I'm not the successful comedian that made it? So that was, that was a huge, that was fuel. But then I was so humiliated by that moment. And this is where I can't get too much into the minutia, but humiliation and coupled with ability is an interesting, I'm sure it's what has made a lot of winning teams overcome outstanding obstacles. How did they do it? Because they felt fucking humiliated that they had lost so badly that it was almost the best thing for them, for the team and for the fans. It's not always the best thing for your health and wellness, but so fear, feeling humiliated publicly by my brother, by the situation in hand, and then confidence, which was my dad he was born an athlete. He was born gifted in the world of athleticism. He boxed, he golfed, he played basketball, he played football. He excelled in all of them. And to this day, if you go back into that region, Boston, Alston, Brighton, he was a BC college graduate. If anybody knows George Francis Cook, they go, man, couldn't get past him on the court, couldn't run past him on the. He was a southpaw. You didn't know his fist was hitting you before he even. And even though I'm the only son of George, and I went into the arts with a lot of fear because I was a sensitive kid, let's just say, recapping what we talked about before, the fire that burns in my belly competitively is my father. And I did say, and I've talked about this openly before, so it's not something because of the documentary that I can't repeat, but I did say to my brother in court, I said, you have forgotten that I am my father's son. I don't lose. When I make a decision to play you in something or compete with you or tell you I'm gonna make it all back, so that natural. I love game. I'm a gamer. I love gaming. I love Monopoly or video games and I love coming up with a strategy, and I love it. I love seeing something through. So when you put those with humiliation and fear, there was no way that I wasn't going to come back from that situation. Now I'm going to tell you something that might blow you away. And it's easy probably to hear it and go, oh, well, you could say it because you made it all back and you're comfortable. Sometimes I do look back and go, what would my life have been if I had just accepted that quite possibly there's a path for me forward where I don't need to prove anything to anybody anymore, and that a dollar sign doesn't define me? Where would that journey have taken me if I had relinquished my power right in that moment? I was not ready to do that. I could not do that. I didn't want my reputation, and there was too many other ego and id and just a lot of stuff. But I do think back and go, man, I don't regret. I don't believe in like, but I do go, okay, if this is a simulation and I can go back and be like, what happens if right there I hit the button and go, I did everything I wanted to do. I just want to fall in love and have a family now and not feel pain. What happens if I just go, hey, everybody, thank you. If you need me, I'm for hire, but I don't need to go back and do 80 arenas and put all that money back. And, I do wonder that. Like, what would my life have been if I didn't need to do all those things? What would my life have been if he hadn't done that? And my initial game plan was telling him and my family, when I'm 40, whatever I've acquired financially, I just want to make movies for other people and make other people's dreams come true. I want to be able to call a young artist and say, I have this much money, that I knew what I was worth. I knew what I thought I knew what I was worth. I wanted to hit 40 years old. I'd had a plan from 20 to 30, and then I had a plan from 30 to 40, and I came through on my 20 to 30 plan. I actually came through from my mid 30 to 35 plan, and then everything happened with my mom and dad and my brother. But if I'd hit that 40-year-old plan, it was like, okay, I had my moment, and now I'd like to just spotlight other people's moments. But he put me so behind the 8 ball that I put all this energy into, like, I'll show,
Do you think that was a little bit of a repeat of you running from the stage to the dressing room? Was it that sort of?
No, because I was very confident because I knew after one show while he was incarcerated, after one show, I knew that my fans had blessed me with attendance in the worst housing crisis and one of the worst financial destructions in American history.
Of course, it was during the crash, and you were doing all this.
The world. I kind of look back right now and believe it's like a small miracle that I hope I'm repaying the man upstairs for in service and in being of service, because they came out for me and they allowed me to, pay my legal bills and put, stay in a place that I felt like, at that time was important for me to stay in, and all the things that, creature comforts. But more than anything, it was just like hand to heart moments every night. Like, wow, you're showing up at a time when I know everybody, what I did take from that era and why my career changed exponentially after that was I cannot do anything after this moment for these fans that either mails it in or looks like I just did a cash grab, or I only want to make sure that the people that helped me in this moment where I was at my lowest, that they know, hey, Dane put out something. I know he worked really hard on that, and he knows, my hard-earned dollar is gonna, it's gonna be worth it. So that's probably more than anything. The value I got out of that was not a number. The value I got out of that was I'm only ever gonna do things that make me, I'm not in the business of good. I want to be in the business of doing things that make me feel great. My crew feel great. My wife feel great. The people around me. I want to do things that make my fans know that moment that you helped me to get my head above water, that I don't forget that. So I'm not going to give you anything. I won't even show up. Sometimes people go, where have you been? I go, I'm not going to just go out and give a show if I don't feel like I have something really great.
Yeah. Giving back seems to be a theme, a thread that's run through everything we've spoken about. There's an awareness that I need to have purpose, and part of that purpose is giving it back. Obviously, losing the money, going out and doing that tour again gave you a really solid appreciation of the people who had supported you. And I guess increased that desire to give things back. I know you're a mentor for comedian Matt Rife at the moment. Is that right?
Yeah. Well, he doesn't need any mentoring now.
But so for people who maybe don't know him, my side of the world, we're in Los Angeles now, but he's not a name that's huge over on our part of the world just yet.
He's going to be. His star continues to rise.
Yeah. He's an up-and-coming comic. In many ways, kind of reminds me of you in that he's, the good-looking guy, has jockish.
This is making me feel better than it probably is making. But a few years ago, sure, yeah, I felt like we could have done a buddy movie together or something. He's a very gifted young man.
But he has that. He has that cheekiness about him that he can get away with stuff. So
Sure.
what do you think of Matt Rife? How would you describe him?
I met him at 15. I had the good fortune of, I believe I'm the first show that he saw. He was at the State Farm Arena or something. He saw me when he was 15 and through emails got to know each other. And then lo and behold, he's in LA and he's like, I'm here to be a working comic. And I just became, a friend to him and watched him grow over the years. And he certainly had a long time where he felt like, man, I guess it's not going to happen for me. He wasn't really getting the feedback he was hoping for. You'd like to look and you almost don't want to tell somebody because it's like time traveling and telling them they're going to be great. But I could at that point go, oh, he needs all this time to go. Where is it for me to realize you need all of this just as much as the understanding that it's that you are ascending into your moment. But anyway, so then he was on the road with me. He was my feature act on the last 2 tours before he just figured it out in a way that nobody could tell him, me or anybody else couldn't. His math and what he did to get to a place of not only, acceptance, finding his crowds, but like that ripple effect of something really, something is changing comedy. He's part of that movement. And there's a few different great comics that I think are in that moment with him as well, which is kind of cool to see 4 or 5 different comics that are like very powerful right now. And it's fun to see. But with Matt in particular, it makes me very proud because I got to see him, overcome a lot.
If you were giving him advice in 2008, would it be the same advice you were giving him now, or did you need that perspective of everything that you've been through?
Well, to be fair, I mean, we talked about some real personal, private stuff. So out of respect for Matt, I'll let him hopefully answer that to be able to sit with you someday. Because we covered a lot of, stuff. As people get to know Matt in time, he's got an incredible story. But the things that I said that were a little more general were in 2008 and 2009, we would take hikes together, and I'd say you should really work that social media stuff. And he didn't like it. That wasn't his thing. He's like, I don't want to do it like that. And I'd say, hey, I think that it's gonna, your crowd, they're gonna get to know you in a way that, and it was kind of cool to see. Not only, well, he finally ultimately took a little bit of my advice. I'm sure I wasn't the only person saying it, but then he took it and he started to cultivate it in a way that I or nobody else would have anticipated. And so now he's in the never been done before business. And I'm sure he's probably in some ways, and we've had dinners and even talked about like where we share similarities, but I'm sure in some ways he's sitting there going, okay, I'm in rare air. Who am I? What do I do with it? How do I sustain it? I want to have a career for a life. How do I go beyond this moment? So he's got a whole new set of deliciously fascinating possibilities, questions, and it's going to be fun to see how he manages, but to also know that from all the things that happen to me and around me, that the mindful, thoughtful, compassionate, collaborative person that doesn't want anything from him other than to just see him be his best self, he will have me, whereas I didn't always have those people for me. Unfortunately, I had a lot more. I was so unique in coming through the mainstream at that time that I think that a lot of the old head comics didn't like that. And so I got a lot more kicks. And I think he's getting a little bit more embrace, which is kind of nice to see.
You mentioned the world...
But a few kicks is actually pretty good.
You don't want to be too comfortable.
Not too many hugs.
You mentioned the word mindful there. Talk to me about meditation. What role does that play? And I know you do yoga. Your wife is a yoga instructor.
Pilates.
Okay, sorry.
I have done yoga as well.
Yeah.
I find yoga was not my jam because my mind races, but it races now for good. It races in a way that's not. It doesn't. it doesn't sap me of my, of my energy. I for whatever reason, the way I think and the way I take on the day when I wake up, last like 10 years, I have I guess it's something that's tough to explain, but I know how to alleviate some of when you get spun up on something and when you kind of go like, okay, I can just let go, let God, and that's gonna, find its way. I don't have to be in control of everything all the time. I used to have the expectations that were super high, and I brought them down to like eye level, because if you live always looking to get to that expectation, it's just never ending. You're never feeling a sense of completion or peace.
So what kind of meditation do you do?
Okay, so mine, I would like to get into more traditional, I guess you could say, meditation, but I couldn't find it. For a lot of years, I was too racy in my brain. I felt like I was doing myself a disservice. I think of 10 more things that I wanted to then start thinking about even more. But I started swimming about 4 years ago. And the way I swim, and I tout this, and I want to tell other people whether you want to get in shape, or for me, like just being able to be by myself for a little bit and swim. It's not swimming laps. It's not like you're going back and forth. I have a swim tether. It's like a little bungee. It's 12 feet long. It's hooked off to the side of the pool. And then I wear little goggles and a snorkel. And I'm in one place. And so I'm not having to think about laps or turning around or breathing. If I want to listen to music, underwater, I usually listen to something kind of zen. It's the sun is out. I get sparkle off the bottom of the pool on most days. And something about, I'm a Pisces, and something about the water. Ever since I was a kid, you could pour this water and I stare at it and it brings my level of stress immediately down. My mom used to always say to me, don't get Dane near a fountain, because if there was a fountain near me, I would just stare at it. I could turn on the water in the bathroom. She would have to come in and turn off, because I would actually sit by the sink and I would stare at the water. So when I got in the pool and the tether, and I would just be in one place, and I hit my calorie count on my watch, 500 calorie burn in 42 minutes. 1,000 calorie burn in 42 minutes. But I find that like it centers me. I do my affirmations when I'm swimming.
What kind of affirmations do you say, if you don't mind sharing them?
Yeah, I guess they're things, to kind of paraphrase myself. Usually they're being as assertive as I can for people and whatever they need from me. Truthfulness. I hope I'm always available to be able to share those things. Sometimes I guess that I think everybody's always, saying, oh, you have to have tact, right? Everybody's always like a little more docile about things. And I'm a believer that like, no, just like say a real raw truth. Because when you say a truth that's stark, if I tell you what you did made me feel this and this, and what I saw, I believe made that and that happen. Now, you may not like that. And some people don't, trust me. Because when I do make that my, modus operandi to be as the truth teller to you. If you come to me and say, tell me the truth, I'm not going to fabricate anything, not even a little part. In fact, I'm going to say something that's so uncouth and so like, really? You had to say it like that? Yes, because when you come to me and I say, that's the greatest thing I've ever seen you do, you will believe me. And that's only earned if you can be honest about everything else. And so I ruminate a lot about being a vessel of absolute truth, to everything and everybody around me and to myself. So affirmations, and I do the affirmations in the morning. I have to look at myself. I didn't look at myself for a lot of years. I thought I was ugly. I thought I was not worth being looked at. And so it's still tough for me. I'm not going to say at 52, I'm stare in the mirror but I have to, look in the mirror and I have to champion myself. I have to.
People don't like that. It's not a comfortable place to be. A lot of people can't bear to look at themselves in the mirror and hold their own gaze.
I would say to them, look, day one, just look at yourself for a minute. Just look. Don't even have the conversation. And not necessarily day two, but when you're ready, say, you know, you're a good person. You know, you have a lot of value. You know, just say something that really, you know, makes you feel. Say something that you need to say to yourself. Say something that you know lives within you. I mean, we can't say those things. We could say 10 great catchphrases now, and then finally you can look and you can say, you know, I want to be a great husband, and I'm going to do everything that I can to. And those conversations become. My mom used to say, the first thing I ever heard my mom say on the saddest day of my life in 7th grade was, "You're your best friend. You have to learn to be your best friend. Love yourself." And it annoyed the shit out of me because I used to say, "That's a very lonely idea, Mom. I want friends. Why don't they like me? Why am I not accepted?" And she would say, she would rub my back and I'm crying. She would say, "You have to be your best friend." Oh my God, she was so right. You can't be anything and available for anybody else. You can't, the resilience and all that comes from step number one is I have value. My vibration in this world matters just as every person you meet, everybody walks by you, strangers on the street, everybody has the same equal value. We can all do something in a heartbeat that can save a life. We can all do something in a heartbeat that can uplift somebody. One good sentence can change exponentially the rest of someone's life. And you have the availability to say that if you know yourself. And so the affirmations in the morning, every morning, my wife, you know, I wake up usually like, I'm like this, I'm ready, let's go. Like, I'm ready. I have to remind myself because if I don't, then, you know, idle mind is the devil's workshop. And I too can get down on myself. And I'm very good at strategically sneaking in a little beat down on myself of like, why, you know, you could be doing more, or that could be, you know, I can just find ways to kind of chip away and diminish. So I have to do, but the swimming I find is like, you know, you're breathing the oxygen to your brain, the sparkle, there's something hopeful about being in the water. It's just a beautiful experience. Every time I get out of the pool, I feel absolutely centered, 100% back in my body.
There's something about a snorkel as well because it makes your breathing so audible. It really forces you to bring your attention to your breath. So and if I noticed I did scuba diving with my son and I wasn't particularly comfortable, and I could hear it in my breath. So you hear, you know, it's something rubs off your leg and you're like, you know. So you really have to focus on the breath and get into the rhythm. And I could see without being mindful. I'm conscious of our time. You mentioned your wife and your home life, and you know, you seem like you're in a really good place. You got 2 dogs, am I right?
2 dogs.
Yeah. What are the dogs' names?
We got Rhodesian Ridgeback Ripley. She's 3, a little over 3, and then I have a Shepherd Poodle that I saved years ago. He's 8, named Chopper.
Amazing.
The best. Oh, the best. The unconditioned love right there. That is the greatest. And the good fortune of finally accomplishing something that I'd probably wanted more than anything, which was a teammate in my life who I could love and believe in, and 2 individuals who have a lot of hopes for themselves, but then when we come together, Kelsey and I, we have things that are have nothing to do with those things.
Yeah.
And are just as exciting to go, that's a we thing. These things don't happen without us together. And it's nice to have that it's kind of like not to be like so much whimsy about it, but it's it's nice to finally have that person in my life that I really feel like understands me in that unique way that
Your resilience is still being tested to a certain amount because you're doing a bit. There's a bit of firefighting in terms of the age gap between you.
That's
Some
right.
people
That's
have
right.
an issue with that.
Yeah.
You're in your 50s. She's in her 20s.
Yeah.
How do you process that criticism?
Well, you'd have to know us. And if you know us, then you know there's a lot of factors that, lead up to why Kelsey knew that I was the person that she wanted in her life, and why I was looking at Kelsey as a person that I felt like fulfilled a lot of things in me that had gone, that I, in some ways, I guess, where Kelsey really came to my aid was like, I think I thought, oh, I guess I missed the boat on having a family and having that kind of love and having, and then this person comes into your life who just, it's almost like there's a certain narrative that you have either heard from yourself or the world around you, and then somebody comes in with a strong opinion, equal to your opinion, but entirely different. And it was just a beautiful thing to be able to grow with her and realize like, oh, she's the explanation for a lot of the things that I question. And I think that also where Kelsey and I, and this is a little more private, but I can, like, she's helped me find faith in a way that I had certainly lost sight
As in religious faith? Yeah.
Faith. Yeah. Truly like reconnecting with God. And I think that, I'm going to get emotional, but it's like, I think Kelsey and I complete each other in a way that's can only be explained and explored through faith. Yeah. It's the most beautiful 6 years of my life. Nothing compares to it. Nothing in a career, nothing. Just, it's, every day that I get to, experience this level of love, that's where the gratitude really comes from, more than anywhere else.
Finally, do you think that faith, that divine presence, is part of that resilience that you've had to show over the years? If you look back, do you see pockets of divinity there that maybe at the time you weren't aware of, even despite the things that were going on?
I'm still on this journey in a lot of ways to where I think I have a very strong acceptance to why things, say, over the last 10 years happened the way they did. But for the longest time, I'm a little rough and tumbly here because I'm still in a process of understanding where some of my anger and some of my turning my back on faith, why during that time, especially with my mom being ill. So I'm still coming to terms. I'm on a journey of it still. Yeah. I can't answer a question like, I just know that I can look back on that time and probably wish that I embraced my faith more at that time, but I chose to be, I think I felt abandoned by God at that time. And it took me years to realize I had fear of abandonment. That was my biggest issue. I'm an adult child of an alcoholic. I had a phobic mother who was phobic while I was in the womb. I was born of fear. And I have fear of abandonment. And
then that gets reinforced by being abandoned by your brother.
It was like, yes, and society, backlash, it's not all sad music playing, because on any given night, during anything that's happened that we've talked about, there's always been a crowd of people that wanted to come and enjoy my show and have some laughs. So the silence was never so deafening that I felt like, man, I'm crippled by loneliness, or I'm fortunate enough that I've always had a crowd that I could get the worst moments of my life. You go, okay, let's talk about this date, and go, or look at that night and you're like, you were on stage that night. I never stopped doing the thing that I loved, which despite some of the reasonings that I was there or doing it or running from something or thinking it was going to fulfill a need or whatever, I just love it. I just love it. The 13-year-old kid that watched a comedian on TV and thought, that's where I want to be. I want to be one of those people right there. So fortunate, I never felt so depleted that I felt alone in the universe. But I did lose my faith for a long time, and I'm back on that journey, and I'm happy to say with Kelsey especially that it's weird to say, it wouldn't feel this good if I didn't lose it. It wouldn't feel so beautiful and an embrace of
you're coming home.
I do feel that way. And hey, listen, every once in a while I stop right in the middle of the road and go, I got questions. And I still challenge, even in my swim, I challenge, in those conversations, I'm competitive. And so I do sometimes still find myself pushing back, but understanding that's how you made me.
Yeah. Race you, God. Race you to the end of the garden.
I think he wins ultimately.
Dane Cook, thank you so much. It's been a real pleasure. Thank you for your time, for meeting me in your home city. It's been really special. Thank you.
This has really been, in the best possible way, a beautifully cathartic journey, and to be able to look back now on 30 years of stand-up comedy, but to be able to do it in a way that's a great simpatico here chatting between the two of us means a lot to me. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.